Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wanted to attract miracles into your life and help to change the world, then do we have the Coherence Healing Meditations Becoming Supernatural show for you. Today I'll be speaking with Dr. Joe Dispenza, international lecturer, researcher, and the best-selling author of numerous books, including You Are the Placebo and his latest must-read book for changing your life, Becoming Supernatural. And that's just what I want to talk with him about today, about getting in coherence, becoming a one mind, and helping heal yourself and heal the world. That, plus we'll talk about broadcasting energy, Schumann's resonance, Alexander Chechevsky, what on earth is emergence, miracles that are no longer miracles, and why Sputnik is not what you think. So welcome back to the show, Dr. Joe. Are you ready to shine?
As always, I'm happy to be with you, Michael.
Well, happy to have you here and a mighty woohoo! So before we dive right into things, what's been happening at your workshops?
Well, this year was an interesting year, or is an interesting year, because over the last 5.5, 6 years, what we've done is we've done extensive measurements on common people to prove to them how powerful they really are. We've done over 8,500 brain scans. We've done over 5,000 HRV measurements, heart rate variability measurements. We've measured epigenetic changes. We've measured changes in immune function, changes in telomere lengths. We've measured the energy of the room, the energy around people's bodies, the energy centers of their bodies, all to really demystify the process of personal change and transformation. And I like that because the measurements that we've recorded prove without a doubt that people are beginning to understand what it is to be the creator of their lives. And if you can give people sound scientific information, and I believe that science is the contemporary language of mysticism. Science is what demystifies the mystical. And then if they have the ability to really understand it and then turn to the person next to them and explain it, by them explaining that model of understanding, they're beginning to install the neurological hardware in their brain in preparation for an experience. In other words, the more you understand what you're doing and why you're doing it, the how gets easier.
Yep.
If you can't explain it, then it's not wired in your brain. So as you learn new things, you make new connections in your brain. As you begin to repeat it and think about it, those nerve cells that fire together begin to wire together. And if learning is making new connections, then remembering is maintaining those connections. So as people begin to explain this model of understanding, they're really putting in the circuits in place to prepare them for an experience. If you give them the proper instruction and you set up the conditions in the environment where they feel safe enough to create, a certain percentage of those people will get their behaviors to match their intentions and their actions equal to their thoughts. When they do, there's going to be some type of transformation. So we've been measuring that transformation and interpreting it. And the more we interpret that transformation, the more information we've gained to be able to teach transformation again the next time. So we've been able to close the gap between knowledge and experience. So the last 6 years or so, all the measurements that we've gathered, we've made scientific history over and over again. And you don't have to be a monk or an academic or a scholar or a nun or a rabbi. All you have to do is just understand the formula. So we were doing these week-long, these events, that were 4 days, 4.5 days. And I realized that right around that Saturday or Sunday when the event was ending, people started having some really profound experiences. So I thought, well, heck, what if we extended the workshops 3 or 4 more days and give them the opportunity to spend the whole week and immerse themselves deeper into the experience? And I have to tell you, we've done 5 or 6 week-long events now, and the miraculous of biblical proportion is starting to happen right before our eyes. And I'm talking about not just somebody's shoulder pain going away or their insomnia getting somewhat better. I'm not talking about small changes in well-being. I'm talking about people that were born with 5% vision, that never saw a face, that never saw colors or details, get their vision back. I'm talking about people who were deaf, that had hearing aids or had no ability to hear out of one ear or both ears, now hearing again. People with tumors on their thyroid, tumors on their body, in 1 week shrinking and disappearing. People with crutches or people even in wheelchairs. We've seen those people break out of their patterns and really begin to live a very different life. And so I have to tell you, Michael, that I think I'm more surprised than anybody because we're witnessing that right before our very eyes. And I think that when you really begin to experience it or at least witness it or observe it, you can't go back to being the same person again. It changes you on a very deep level. And I think this is a time in history where it's not enough to know. I think it's a time in history to know how. And all of a sudden you're seeing just like an infection spreads amongst the community and creates disease. I'm starting to see how health and wellness can be as infectious as disease. And it's so emotional and it's so incredible. It's so beautiful. Yeah.
How have you changed through this experience seeing this? Because I'm sure you weren't planning on going into this saying, well, I'm going to, I don't know, teach people how to walk on water.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I never thought I'd be where I am right now. I keep saying to my staff, I'm waking up in my dream. Like this has been my dream. My dream has been, the enormous amount of energy and time I've put into developing a model of understanding and then step by step, methodically, doing my best to teach it in a way that doesn't exclude anybody, that everybody could understand, and going at a pace where everybody could keep up. There's a quickening that's starting to happen now, just like the 4-minute mile. When people start to break some veneer or some barrier of what they think is impossible, as people start to pierce that veil, just like the 4-minute mile, more and more people are starting to understand that they can do it as well. So for me, on a personal level, I'm so overjoyed. There's no other place that I want to be when I'm teaching a week-long event than at that week-long event. And I think there's a lot of people that feel the same way. And there's such strong community that's created, and there's just a community that's built on the energy and frequency of love, on the energy and frequency of gratitude, of inspiration, and there's a momentum that's starting to happen that you just have to hold on, because I never know what's going to happen. I just know that if we keep giving people numerous opportunities to connect, sooner or later they're going to get beyond themselves and they're going to connect even more. And that's one of the things I learned from all the brain scans that we've studied, is that I think that you and I are at our absolute best when we get beyond ourselves. And there's Absolutely. An elegant moment that takes place, and a formula, in fact, where you can actually teach it. And so people now are starting to connect to that field called the quantum field, and they're beginning to produce effects on matter, and it's happening in a shorter and shorter amount of time. And if it's happening in a shorter and shorter amount of time, that means they're no longer playing by the rules of Newtonian physics, which requires predictability in time. They're doing it from the field, the energy of the quantum, and that process takes place in no time.
Well, and thank God for that, because the world is really a wacky place right now. We talked about you had fires outside of your place in December. We've got an extinct volcano that has a 10,000-acre fire on it in front of our house right now. The world is at it's at a changing point. There seems to be both a critical mass in far as we can't continue this way anymore. But what you're describing is emergence, which is we're starting to move more like the birds, more like the fish, and we're hitting some sort of, maybe you can tell us about this incredibly positive critical mass.
Sure, I think we're living in a time of extreme polarities. I think that things have to be pulled apart. Polarity, if you look at even studies in chaos theory, that there always has to be extreme polarities before there's a reorganization. Mm-hmm. And everything that is not consistent with a new level of energy or new level of consciousness is going to spiral apart. So think about it. Every system in nature, before it evolves, goes through a period of chaos. It's just the way it is. And so information is what is causing this whole thing to accelerate, because you don't need an authority any longer to gain information. You don't need a priest or a rabbi or a teacher. You don't need a doctor to gain information. Because of technology, information is so accessible. So every time you learn knowledge, you become more conscious of the way things really are. And if you become more aware and you become more conscious, you can't have consciousness without energy. So there's an elevation globally of energy taking place. In fact, if I think back 5 years ago or 10 years ago and I walked out in front of an audience and I had to work to get an audience to a certain level of understanding, those days are over and we'll never go back to that again. Everybody is informed. So that greater level of energy, that greater level of consciousness is causing old systems and old paradigms to begin to spiral out. And so whether you're looking at the environment, politics, economics, religion, education, journalism, medicine, all of those paradigms are beginning to unravel because they're no longer consistent with a greater level of energy. So how then do we face these challenges is the big question, because if we face them in fear, then it's the very emotion and energy of fear that created them in the first place. If we face them with hostility and anger, well, we are going to be reacting and recreating the same outcome. So we have to embrace this understanding, not as in a separate way of like, you're over there and I'm over here, because that's the lie that we've been told, that separation is the way things really are. And in fact, in the quantum, everything is connected by an invisible field of energy, everything material, in fact. So then how do you unify everything material? And it's that elevated emotion called love or gratitude. So then when we begin to come from that level of consciousness, we experience less separation. In fact, our heart begins to open, our field around our body begins to expand, and that field around the body that begins to expand actually touches every other thing that's material from an immaterial place. That means then, when you're feeling love for yourself, or love for life, or love for the moment, every single person that you have a relationship with, if your signal is the strongest, will begin to affect their autonomic nervous system. We know this to be the truth because we've measured this over and over again. We can take a group of 750 people and put them in a room, and we can have 50 people in the front of the room wearing heart rate monitors. Now, it turns out, as you know the heart math team over there, Howard Martin, Roland, and Debbie, and all those guys, that when you're frustrated, when you're impatient, when you're resentful, your heart actually beats very, very incoherently. It beats out of order. That's because you're stepping on the gas and the brake at the same time. The survival systems are switching on, the stress hormones are being released, but you're not running, you're not fighting, and you're not hiding. So there's a conflict between the accelerator and the brake, and that's what causes the heart to beat arrhythmically. So then when you switch from those limited emotions to elevated emotions, then you start feeling love and gratitude. All of a sudden, you begin to produce a very coherent magnetic field around your body. That energy is frequency, and all frequency carries information. So if you have 750 people in the room, and you have 50 people in the front of the room wearing the heart rate monitor, and you teach people how to elevate their energy and to open their heart and create coherence, and then lay the thought for the greatest good of everybody sitting in the front of the room, that their lives be enriched, that their bodies be healed, that their dreams come true, that the mystical find them. When you see the majority of those people wearing the heart rate monitors all go into heart coherence at the exact same time, in the exact same day, on the exact same meditation, you have to scratch your head and realize that there is no separation. In fact, it is that energy that binds all of us. So now, how do you change the world then is the next question, because if you're seeing those non-local changes, then those people that are feeling heart coherence, every person they're in a relationship with, that they are networked with, to some measure or some degree, will have an effect on their autonomic nervous system. Well, they'll feel more coherent or more loving in that moment. So then if you get a group of people all doing this around the world, and HeartMath has done great research on Project Coherence to show that, in effect, that it can happen on opposite sides of the world, you get enough people doing that, you start seeing everybody coming from the place of love. Now, what does that do? Something emerges. A new species, a new consciousness emerges, where we're all acting as one mind. The beauty behind those birds and those fish is when you look at them, they look at like one organism. They look like a bigger organism than they really are. The individuals are making up the whole, but they're connected and they're acting as one mind. So then the antithesis is also true. The way you control people and cause them to believe that they're separate is to create the stress hormones, because when stress hormones are released, the opposite happens. You contract. The energy of field around your body is being used. The vital life force is being used and turned into chemistry, and the field around your body shrinks. Now you feel more like matter and less like energy, more like particle and less like wave. The very hormones of stress really endorse our senses, and we become materialists. So if we can't see it or smell it or hear it or taste it or feel it, it doesn't exist. And those chemicals then cause us to feel separation, because our senses fool us into believing you're over there and I'm over here. I'm over here and my dreams are way over there, and I have to drag my body through space to get to my future, and it's going to take time. So our dreams are way out away from us, and it's going to take time for us to get to them. So now, get a community of people together that are all resonating at that frequency. You start to see dramatic changes that will begin to take place in crime rates, in violence, in economic growth as a result of a new energy. Now, but here's the deal. If you measure those changes when, say, in a peace gathering project where thousands of people are focusing on peace, and you start seeing changes in crime and violence and everything else, when those peace gathering projects end, violence and crime return back to the same level again. So it's not enough to just think it. We have to live it. We have to live that prayer every single day. We have to demonstrate peace. We have to embody it. We have to do it with our eyes open. We have to demonstrate it so that we give others permission to do the same. And so then the question is, then how do you become supernatural? Well, you have to first start doing what feels unnatural. Mm-hmm. That means when everybody else is in fear, that's when you show courage. When everybody else is hostile and angry, that's the time to show love and compassion. When everybody else is in lack and poverty, that's the time to give. And I think that gives people permission to do the same, because of mirror neurons. We want to emulate that behavior, and it counts the most in those moments. It doesn't count when everything is comfortable and okay. It counts the most when you should be doing something else. And if you're able to go against those years, thousands of years of genetic programming hardwired into our survival centers, all of a sudden other people will begin to do the same, and you will see an emergence of a new consciousness.
Unbelievable. There are about a dozen questions I've come up with out of what you've just said right there. So let's try to take a few of these key pieces. First off, I love this line here. Energy is frequency, and frequency carries information.
It does. I mean, if you look at a radio wave, you can't see the radio wave, but it's permeating through everything material. And on that radio wave is a signal, is information. And the radio dial or the antenna, you acts as a transducer, or a TV antenna acts as a transducer and takes that frequency and turns it into a picture. So then when you're tapping into information from the field, mm-hmm. certain latent aspects of your brain act as a transducer, and you will take that information and your brain will turn it into imagery. And that's called a download or an upgrade. People are starting to connect to that field of information, and they're having very significant inner experiences that we've actually been able to predict now. In fact, we now know when it's going to happen. So you're always sending and receiving light and information all the time.
So on that note, the reverse of it is true. And now I'm thinking about, I wanted to stay with the individual, but I'm having a hard time not thinking about the field of the earth, which is part of the Coherence project that Howard Martin and HeartMath is working on, which is we are affecting the field as much as the field is affecting us. So not only are we getting downloads, but we can project into the field and make mass change based on what we're projecting.
Right. Now, there's some conditions on that. There you can create a field that is very dissonant, very incoherent, static, that's not a clear signal. So the effects that you produce in sending that information have less effects on the nature of reality than when your brain and heart are coherent. So when your brain is coherent, all the compartments that usually are subdivided are resonating in some type of harmony and some type of order. When your heart is coherent, the rhythm of the heart is producing that measurable field. So in order for you to affect matter, mm-hmm. you have to combine a clear intention, a coherent brain, with an elevated emotion, a heart-centered feeling. This is the center of oneness. This is the center of wholeness. This is where our divinity starts. This is the union of polarity, the union of opposites. This is where it all comes together. And when you get it, and when you get that energy right here, it happens, and we've measured this. Once it's here, it's going to go all the way to the brain. It's going to act as an amplifier to amplify the brain. And when the brain starts to get super coherent, then it has very direct effects on the heart. So what's the relevance behind that? Well, once again, the signal that you're creating on a daily basis is going to either work in a constructive way or in a destructive way. And as an example, if you're walking around feeling sorry for yourself and suffering and feeling victimized, then you're actually emanating that signal into the field. And what you're saying is, bring me an experience equal to my suffering, but bring it in a way that I least expect, that surprises me and leaves no doubt that I've created this outcome. So in a sense, we're not punished for our sins, we're punished by our sins. And sin is an attitude. So then the opposite is also true. When you teach people how to connect to the energy of a future dream and be defined by a vision of the future instead of the memories of the past, to believe in their future more than they believe in their past, to fall in love with their future more than they fall in love with their past, and be able to combine that clear intention of that future and begin to feel the emotions of that future before it's made manifest. They're broadcasting a whole new signature into the field. Now, the beauty behind that is that the longer you're conscious of that energy, the more you're drawing that future to you, which also means then the moment you get in your car and start getting angry and getting frustrated because you're in traffic, now you just disconnected from the energy of your future, and now you're back to the energy of your past. And those survival emotions exert less effects on the nature of reality. So now you feel like matter trying to change matter. You're separate, and so you force it, you control it, you try harder, you wish, you pray, you hope. I mean, hope is a beggar. We do everything, compete to try to manipulate and make it happen because we have limited resources then. So then when a person's able to sustain or maintain that modified state of mind and being, then the fun starts to happen because you start seeing those synchronicities. You start seeing those coincidences, those opportunities, those unknowns, those things start falling out of nowhere because you are connected to that field of information. And not only are you connected to it, but you're also beginning to influence it. So then more and more people are creating now, and less people are experiencing the state of being called being a victim. So then if you're a victim, then you would say, I was angry because of traffic. Well, then I would say to you, well, you mean your outer world was controlling how you think and feel. Some circumstance, some person, something in your outer world is actually controlling your feelings and thoughts. That means you're a victim to those circumstances. But when you change the way you think and feel, and it starts to produce effects in your outer world, now you start to realize you're the creator of your life. And the moment you start seeing feedback in your life, you're going to pay attention to what you did and you're going to do it again. And now you're going to believe now you're more of the creator of your life and less of the victim of your life.
Thank you. So let's go to how do we start to change the way we think and feel to put ourselves more in the creator role rather than the victim role?
Well, this is the beauty behind, as you said earlier, living in this day and age. I mean, more and more people are waking up. I mean, more and more people are really beginning to realize that nobody is so special to be excluded from this phenomenon. And we all have the same biology. We come with all the neurological and biological machinery to do this. And we all have done it. We've all said, what would it be like to have my own show? What would it be like to be wealthy, to be healthy, to be free, to be in a new relationship, to have a family, to have a mystical experience? And the moment we ask that question, we turn on the creative center in our brain, the frontal lobe. That's the boss. That's the CEO. That's the symphony leader. And it has connections to the entire brain. And one thing it wants to do is answer the question. So what does it do? It looks out into the landscape of the brain and see what's stored in there. Things we've learned intellectually and things we've experienced that's related to the question. And it begins to activate those circuits. The frontal lobe calls them up. And then those circuits start to fire in tandem. And when they start to resonate and fire in tandem, we get a picture in our mind. That's called intention. We're selecting a new potential in the quantum field. Now, the passionate person who's fully engaged in looking at that future, observing that future, the thought in their mind literally becomes the experience. Now, the end product of an experience is called an emotion. And all of a sudden, the person starts to feel the emotion of the event before it's made manifest. And now, how you think and how you feel creates your state of being. So in a sense, they're changing their state of being. Now, the stronger the emotion that they feel, the more altered they are inside of them, the more they'll pay attention to the picture in their mind. And now they're creating a long-term memory. In other words, they're remembering their future. Now, you can't just do that once and then get up and expect your bank account to be filled. That's not how it works. Or you to be selected to go to the moon. That's not how it works. You have to be able to maintain that modified state of mind and body, independent of any condition in your external environment, independent of the emotions or habits or hardwired attitudes that are subconscious programs that are stored in the body, and independent of time. And if you can, you will start to see those unusual events beginning to occur in your life. So then you become the scientist in your life. And so it takes training to teach people how to get beyond their past. And we know this because we've done enough workshops to know that the hardest part of a workshop that we do is the first day or two. Because people are coming, they're emotional, they're got problems, they're got a lot of questions, they're overly analytical, they're stuck, and we just keep coaxing them past their identity, and sooner or later they start letting go. And when they do, now they're ready to create.
How do you coax them past their identity? How do people listening to this start to get themselves beyond their identity? You said another thing brilliant. How do we fall in love more with the future than the falling in love that we have with our past?
Yeah. Well, most people like to wait for crisis or breakdown or trauma or disease or diagnosis to finally make up their mind to change. My message is, why wait? So you can learn and change in a state of pain and suffering, or you can learn and change in a state of joy and inspiration. I like the latter, and more people are getting that. So I don't really care, because people come to our events for all kinds of reasons. They're suffering from a disease. They have a mental health problem. They want to be richer. They want to be happier. They want to have a new job, a new career, a new relationship. They want to have a mystical experience, or they just want to prove to themselves they're creators, and they're already affluent and wealthy in their lives, or happy in their lives. They just want more. So knowledge is the precursor to experience.
Yep.
The more knowledge you have, the more prepared you are for an experience. So then, how do we get more people out of living in their past and living in their future? Well, think about the hormones of stress. When you are under stress and that sympathetic nervous system is switched on, you're going to narrow your focus on the cause, whatever it is. So then as you narrow your focus on matter, if it's a person, it's an object, it's a thing, it's an animal, it's a place, all of your attention is being directed towards something in your outer world, right? So then where you place your attention is where you place your energy. So the stronger the emotion you have to a problem in your life, or your ex, or a person, or your boss, or whatever, the more you're giving them your attention, which means where you place your attention is where you place your energy. You're giving your power away to that person, and that's available energy that you could be using to heal your body or design a new destiny. So then set a person down, because the change is to be greater than your environment, to be greater than all those conditions in your outer world, to be greater than your body, and to be greater than time. Sit them down and say to them, okay, you've been narrowing your focus on everything material, converging your attention. Let's do the opposite. Let's diverge your attention. Let's open your attention. Instead of focusing on matter, focus on nothing. Open your awareness to the field, to space. And if you open your awareness to the field and space, in the beginning it takes a little practice, but when you begin to sense space, you're no longer thinking or analyzing. And if you're not thinking or analyzing, you start to change your brain waves and slow them down. So then if you keep doing this, sooner or later, you're going to take your attention off your body, and you're going to go from somebody to nobody. You're going to take your attention off the people in your life. And as you lower the volume to those emotions, you're going to go from someone to no one. If you take your attention off your cell phone, your computer, your car, all the things in your life, you're going to go from something to nothing. If you take your attention off where you're sitting or where you need to be or where you need to go, you're going to go from somewhere to nowhere. And if you take your attention off time, linear time, you're going to go from some time to no time. And that is the moment you get beyond yourself. And that is when you are passing through the eye of the needle. That is the door to the quantum field. That is the nexus of the quantum. And you can't enter that quantum field as a somebody. You can only enter it as a nobody. So when a person begins to get beyond themselves, the only thing they're left as is pure consciousness. They're left as an awareness, aware that they're aware in infinite space. Now, the quantum field is an invisible field of information that transcends time and space. In other words, there's no people there, there's no bodies, there's no things, there's no places, there isn't even time. So take away the earth, take away the moon, take away the stars, take away the light from the stars, take away the galaxies, take away everything material. And what are you left with? Just an infinite space of nothing physical. That is the quantum field. But just because you can't see something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So you can only experience that field with your awareness. Now, getting people to that elegant moment, we can only talk around. You have to practice doing it. And now I'm happy to say, after 6 years of laboring with people to get beyond themselves, and to be able to slow their brainwaves down from that beta brainwave pattern, that high beta brainwave pattern, into alpha and theta. The whole purpose of meditation is to get beyond the analytical mind. And what separates the conscious mind from the subconscious mind is the analytical mind. So then, as people begin to slow down their brainwave patterns, they're actually entering the operating system, where all those hardwired attitudes and automatic habits and programs and emotional reactions and addictions exist. Now they can begin to make measurable changes. So then if you take a group of people and you work with them to get beyond themselves, there's going to be an enormous amount of chaos that's going to be created in the brain and the body, and they're going to want to quit, and they're going to give up, and they're going to get frustrated. But if I give them another opportunity, they're going to do it again. If I give them another opportunity, sooner or later, they're going to finally surrender. And when they do, they're going to connect to that field. And it's the most familiar, unfamiliar feeling you'll ever have. It's a level of coherence or order, because as you get closer and closer to that field as an awareness, you experience greater and greater degrees of oneness and wholeness and less separation. So if you feel less separate from your dreams, then you feel like you already have them. You're no longer in want or lack. You feel whole. And when you feel whole, you can't want because you feel like you have everything. And that is the perfect place to create from. And so we've worked, Michael, so hard in helping people to get to these points. And I'm so happy to say that when we're doing these week-long events now, I never, ever in my life thought I'd be witnessing what I'm witnessing in terms of changes in health and mystical experiences. And you can't tell me now you're too old to do this. You can't tell me that now. Can't tell me you're too sick to do this. Can't even tell me that, because I've seen all kinds of ages and all kinds of sick people really reverse some very serious health conditions. You can't tell me you had a turbulent past and you can't change, because I've seen some people with some really turbulent pasts get beyond it. I've seen people that were out of shape, overweight, underweight, vegetarians, carnivores. I've seen it happen in all different sizes, shapes, and people. And the beauty behind it is that it's inclusive, and it's happening more and more.
Awesome. So a few different questions on this. First off, what can we do on a daily basis to slow down and shift our brainwave patterns?
Well, I mean, there's all kinds of cues. I mean, one of the things that we do is we teach people that very simple meditation of finding the elegant sweet spot of the generous present moment. That when they get beyond their body, their environment, and time, and they become pure consciousness, they have to be in the present moment to do that. Now, there's a formula for that as well. And if you can go and check out some of the meditations, but we teach people the basis of how to get there. Heart coherence is another way to begin to slow your brainwave patterns down. When you're feeling with your heart, I always say the brain thinks, but the heart knows. Mm-hmm. When you're feeling with your heart and you're trusting the intuition of your heart, that's because your energetic field is tapping into information, and your heart becomes the compass for you to know. So then when you lead with your heart in your life, it's very different than leading from any other place. So if you're going to believe in a future that you're creating with all of your heart, it better be open and activated. So heart coherence is another way. We have certain breathing techniques that we teach people that help to slow their brainwave patterns down to get into that place. But I mean, there's many ways to go about it. But the key is that you do it, because if you don't do it, you're probably not going to experience the benefits. And just like any skill or any habit, in the beginning it takes a lot of conscious effort, but then once you get good at it, then you can do it automatically. And we have people in our work that we've measured their brain wave patterns. They can change their brain waves in 4 seconds, 5 seconds, 9 seconds, 12 seconds. It's not like, hey, I'm getting to the quantum field before you. It's more like, I know how to do this. I've been doing it. I know how to get there. It's a skill. And that becomes highly effective and important when you're at a balance and you need to make your way back to balance. Our community just naturally says, excuse me, I'm going to take a few moments and get centered here.
Where does, or is it necessary, self-love, self-compassion, self-forgiveness, any of this healing on the inside, is this necessary to make that jump and make that leap?
I think so. I have a theory about that because so many people confuse self-love with pleasure. And they think that when they feel pleasure, that's love. No, that the more whole you feel, the less need for pleasure you'll have. The less whole you feel, the more you're attached to things that are going to stimulate you and create pleasure. So then how is self-love born? You have to come up against the end of your emotional belief. You have to come to the very point where you don't think you can go any further, that you've reached the end and you don't believe that there's anything beyond that. And then you have to step out a little further and go a little further than where you thought you could go. Every time you do that, something awakens in you. You have more respect for yourself. You have more respect for life. You have more respect for others because you realize that change isn't that easy. You start to feel this kind of sense of peace and compassion because you've come up against your own limits and you're stretching yourself beyond those limits. So then when you finally free yourself from the chains of those emotions and those habits that keep you anchored to the past, there's a liberation of energy. And that liberation of energy is the body going from particle to wave, from matter to energy. And that energy that's being released, the body starts to feel what we call joy or love or freedom. And that is what I call the natural state of being. So you're not getting that joy or that freedom or that love from anything outside of you. There's nothing out there that's creating it. It's happening from within you. So then we see then in our research, when people really start to cross that river of change and start to break through, and they begin to activate certain latent systems in their brain, and those latent systems start signaling oxytocin, the love chemical. Oxytocin signals nitric oxide. Nitric oxide signals a chemical that causes your heart and lungs to swell. Your heart literally is engorging with energy and blood, and it's literally swelling, and this center now is activated. So then, when you feel that, you're not going to want to lose that feeling. In fact, if you start judging another person, if you start getting impatient with another person, you'll notice that feeling will go away. You start analyzing yourself, that feeling will go away. So then it makes sense then that when you feel that level of wholeness, that you feel so whole that you wouldn't want to lose the feeling, then self-love leads to allowing, which means I'm just going to allow you because I'm so in love with myself, I can allow you. When I'm not in love with me, I'm going to pick you apart. But the more in love I am with myself, the more love and appreciation I have for all things. I am no longer in the same energy as my enemy, the same energy as my coworker that I despise. I'm in a different energy. And then the side effect of allowing is called joy. So then if you're not judging or criticizing, then you're not dividing your energy. And if you're not dividing your energy, you're going to feel joy as a side effect. So then more and more people start to figure this out. In other words, if you spend 2 hours in a meditation getting beyond your fear or your anger or your pain or your suffering. It took you 2 hours to get beyond it. And you feel the liberation of you getting beyond those limited states. I guarantee you, you would be walking around in your life celebrating because that divine intelligence that's living in you, that's giving you life, is now expressing itself through you to a greater measure. So then you're in love with life because you're connected to life. And imagine how far you can go with this, because the more you connect to that field and the more you connect to that life essence, the more you're going to feel in love with life, because that's where your attention is. I guarantee you that if you did that every single day, you would be less likely to want to feel fear or pain or suffering or anger, and more likely to want to feel those elevated states. And you're not going to be relying on anybody to make you happy. You're going to realize that happiness comes from within.
I love it. And it's really a positive feedback loop, or I'm going to use this in a positive term, an addiction to an awareness of how, of getting beyond yourself and how great that can feel.
Absolutely. And so imagine in our week-long events, you got 1,000 people in an event, and they all come for all those reasons. In the first 2 days, wow, it's a scramble. There's a lot of chaos going on, but we keep going. And then all of a sudden, people start popping. They start letting go. They start connecting. And all of a sudden, as they start connecting and their field starts to expand, their field starts influencing the person next to them. And all of a sudden, you see this generation of energy start to take place. And by the end of the event, there is energy in the room for the miraculous. There is energy in the room to heal. There's energy in the room for the uncommon, for a possibility. There's energy to create a new future because people are actually contributing to the field instead of drawing from the field.
So, okay. How do we take this, in a sense, the term that just came to mind, because you said we're generating, is we're becoming generators. How do we use this to help each other?
Well, look, I mean, people think they think it's about their wealth or their health or their freedom or their new relationship or their new job. It's none of that. It's about who you become in the process. So you overcome your fear, you overcome your doubt, you overcome your unworthiness, you overcome your pain, you overcome your past. You keep overcoming, you keep overcoming, you keep overcoming. You're going to become somebody else. And once you become wealth, I mean, nobody creates wealth. You generate wealth. It's an energy. You generate freedom. You generate all those things. You are the generator of it. So then I love this because people are so conditioned, me included, for many years, that we have to drag our bodies through space to get what we want, right? That's living in the world of separation, matter trying to change matter. And so the more I'm living by those survival emotions, the more it's going to take me time to get my dreams to come true. But in the quantum, if you're creating from the field instead of from matter, Einstein said the field is the sole governing agency of the particle. He didn't say the particle controls the particle, the field controls the particle. So if you're creating from the field instead of from the particle, when there's a vibrational match with your energy, and even Einstein said this, it's all vibration. When there's a vibrational match with your energy and some potential in the quantum field, you don't have to go anywhere to get it. In fact, you are going to collapse space and time, and the event is going to be drawn to you. Now you don't go anywhere to get it. You are calling experiences to you. So then the final point is that, well, then you got to take responsibility for every area of your life, even the stuff that isn't working, because the stuff that isn't working, you got to change your energy then equal to something greater. And so then people will say, well, yeah, but you understand this person did it to me. And I would say, right, but if you keep reacting, you're going to create another one of those. So then what do you have to do? You have to get beyond the memories of our past and fall in love with the future over and over again, so that all of a sudden you're believing in that future more than you're believing in the past. And the brain and body, if we do it properly, will look like the future has already happened. Now you don't have to do anything. It's going to come to you.
Beautiful. I'm going to try to narrow it down. I want to understand, or I want to know when your next conference is in a minute. But before that, one of the challenges of what you said, so we can get some clarity on it, is if we are responsible for everything, it is easy for us to go into a place of self-blame. If I created all of this, then I'm a blank, blank, blank. What do we do about that?
No, only you do that if you're already a victim. If you're not a victim, you would just say, hey, I need to learn a lesson here. I need to modify my behavior. Okay, I'm done with that.
Yeah.
I've owned that. I've did it enough times. I'm finished. I want to try something else. You're a soul on the journey back to singularity, back to source. And there's no God up there that's going to help you. You got to do it yourself. You came down and descended into density to answer the question, is there more? Now that you're answering the question, there's more, you just got to ask the same question to get out of here. Is there more? So then as you start asking the question and you no longer seduced by the common things in our lives, then it makes sense then that you begin to evolve your understanding. So the person who's a scientist or the student, no longer a victim. There are no victims, they're just students. Person may say, well, I feel bad because I created that. Well, how long are you going to feel bad for? Yeah, but it's not the fact that you feel bad. We all feel bad. The question is, how long are you going to do that for? If you let it go for a long enough period of time, you're stuck. Because emotions are a record of the past. If you're feeling the same emotions, you're still in your past. And your body's believing as the unconscious mind. It's in the same past experience 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So then sooner or later, you got to leave familiar territory and you got to make a new choice. And when you make a new choice, just get ready because it's going to feel uncomfortable. You're not going to be in the familiar, the known. You're going to be in the unpredictable. And so many people rush back to the same conditions in their life because they're afraid of the unknown. But that unknown then has to be the perfect place that we create in. So when the person really realizes, okay, well, I created that, okay, dang, all right, I got another opportunity to create something differently. They just turn around, they let go, and they create again. And they do it over and over again until finally they start producing an outcome. The self-love that's created from that is greater than any sports car, greater than any wardrobe, greater than any vacation, greater than any facelift. It's just coming from within you because now you're the resource of your life.
Woohoo! And then I imagine gratitude in these situations can create a positive feedback loop to bring more of this about.
Listen, gratitude, the emotional signature of gratitude is when you're getting something or receiving something or something has already happened for you, you feel gratitude. So then if you're feeling gratitude for your future before it's happened, your body as the unconscious mind is believing that future reality is happening in the present moment. And we only accept, believe, and surrender to the thoughts equal to our emotional state. And we never accept, believe, and surrender to any thoughts that are not equal to our emotional state. You could say, I'm wealthy, I'm wealthy, I'm wealthy, I'm wealthy, I'm wealthy with the 5% of your conscious mind. And it's never going to pass your brainstem because your body's saying, no, you're not, you're miserable, you're unhappy. So then when a person starts elevating their emotional state, feeling gratitude because they can, then that thought will begin to make it right into their body because their body is believing it's happened already. And so then we've done extensive research on gratitude. In 4 days, your immune system can strengthen by 50% just for 10 minutes a day, a few times a day, just feeling gratitude. So the worst thing that could happen to you by feeling gratitude every day is that you'll heal. That's the worst thing.
From there, what one homework assignment would you give people to start to dive into the unknown?
Read, study, practice. Decide what you want your future to look like. Write it down. Take some time and write down what you want a future to look like. And every single day, keep your conscious mind on that future. If you keep doing that over and over again, your subconscious mind will take you right there. It's not that hard. The hardest part of this is making time to do it. Really, just making time to do it.
Thank you. And Jessica, my wife, the producer, always wants me to ask a question for parents and kids. What do we teach our kids, or how do we help get out of their way?
I'm doing a team workshop in Mexico City this weekend on Friday before I do an event with Bruce Lipton and Greg Braden on Saturday and Sunday. But teens are just, this is a great time for the teenage and young children paradigm to shift because, first of all, the best thing you can do for your kids is be the example of everything you want them to be, because children don't learn by what you say, although to some degree they do. They model behavior because of mirror neurons. They're empathy neurons. They're going to become you by observing you. So be the example for your children so that they can begin to emulate you as a person. The next thing is to show them in small and subtle ways that emotions then keep us connected to their past, and teach them how to shorten their emotional reactions to certain things. Teach them how to change their state. If you do that now, that'll become a skill or a habit that they'll use later on in their life. Never, ever try to reason with your child when they're emotional. Nobody wants to be reasoned with when they're emotional. They want to be left alone. No new information can enter the nervous system that is not equal to the emotional state. Put your children to bed every night and ask them what was the greatest thing they learned, what is the greatest thing they're working on, and tell them what you're working on with yourself and in your life. And make sure that you ask them truly, hey, how did you do today? How did you feel like you did today? And if they say, I didn't do very well today, ask them why. And then you'll say, yeah, I saw you. You weren't sharing very well today. Well, let's just talk about the next time it happens. The next time it happens, how could we do it differently? And have them literally work with you on creating another way to do it. You're installing circuitry in their brain, and then put them to bed and tell them a story about a little girl or a little boy that was in this little family and that they had a problem sharing, and all of a sudden they shared and they felt really amazing. And then your child will begin to associate a new way of being. And allegory is a great way to teach our children to become something.
Brilliant. Woohoo! So from there, let's talk about, you've got an event coming up in Toronto in September where we can all start to shift and make changes.
Yes, again, I have no interest really anymore in keynote presentations and conferences and any of those things. I think they're dinner conversation. I'm passionate about the week-long events. It's where I'm putting all my attention, because that's where the miraculous happens. And so we're doing an event. We just finished one in Cancun, Mexico, just last month, and it was outstanding. And so in September we're doing one in Toronto, in September 1st through 7th at the Westin Castle there, downtown Toronto, right on the water. We're almost sold out right now. There's a few seats left, but again, that's where the magic happens. In order for people to come to that week-long event, they have to watch an online course called the Progressive Workshop, and it's a 9-week course that prepares them for the week-long. And then don't worry about it. Just learn the material, practice, and come in, and we'll catch you up. We have team leaders now, and we break the entire community down into smaller groups, and they have their team leaders that help them answer questions and help them practice certain things, and then we move as a community. So we're doing one in September in Toronto, and then October we're in Australia on the Sunshine Coast. November, hopefully we'll be in the UK, and December we'll be back in Cancun at the same place the first week of December, and I mean, it's just amazing what we're seeing. So join us.
Where would people go? URL to find this?
Just drjoedispenza.com, simple and easy. And there's a whole resource page on how to qualify for a week long, and also where the events are located, and just all the other things that are there.
Awesome. And I have to find a way in the future to break away from this show for a week, because I would love to join you at an event.
Michael, of all people that interview me, I know that if you came, you would be switched on.
Woohoo! I will have to do that. So everybody, if you didn't catch drjoedispenza.com, come on over to inspirenationshow.com, and we will get you over to drjoedispenza.com. Before we let you go, and this has been truly brilliant, phenomenal, fantastic. I don't have enough superlatives for it. I love having you on, and I love seeing how you are, both you're transforming personally and you are connecting neurons in ways that is just exponentially growing outward. It's phenomenal to see, Joe. What last words of wisdom do you want to share with people today?
Oh, gosh. I mean, try it out. I mean, become the scientist in your life and measure the effects of you it cause. You already know how to do this. Just take time every single day and disconnect from the outer world, your environment. Get beyond your emotions and habits. Get beyond your body and forget about time and connect to that field of information where we all create from. And if you keep doing that over and over again, you'll learn things about yourself that you would have never learned before, and be defined by a vision of the future. Literally tell the story of your future more than you tell the story of your past, because it's so much easier to forget our vision of our future than to remember it. But if you keep remembering it, sooner or later, you're going to start to see the fruits of all your efforts.
Woohoo! This has been awesome, Joe. I cannot thank you enough. Everybody, go on over to drjoedispenza.com and check it out. See if you can make it there. And wow, phenomenal, phenomenal, phenomenal.
Thank you, Michael. Keep up the great work.
Thank you so, so much. So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get becoming supernatural, and begin getting into the field today and shine bright. Woohoo! Awesome, Joe. Awesome, awesome, awesome.
We did good?
We did great.
Oh, good. Good.
I'm like a kid in a candy store with you. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, you're so knowledgeable and you're so easy to talk to, and you're gracious. You let me finish concepts and you ask good questions. So it's always good to be with someone who's professional.
Thank you. It so goes both ways. Let me know if there's ever anything I can do to help. We're going to get this out as fast as we can. We'll blast it out to everybody we know as well. And we're here. We support you.
You too, bro.
And enjoy everything.
Okay, tell your wife I send my love.
Will do. Thanks, Joe.
All right, bro. Ciao.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like below. Also, leave your comments. Have some real fun with it. Subscribe to our channel where you're going to get more great videos, more interviews coming up. And check out our website, inspirenationshow.com. That's where you'll find tips, blogs, information, videos you won't find anywhere else, and useful and helpful resources to really help you kickstart your life and to shine bright. Thanks so much again. Thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe. See the website. Thanks so much and have fun. Of course, shine bright. Woohoo!